I understand that people are scared of starting a business, makes them nervous, but you should also just flip that and use that to get excited.
You're listening to the Unsure Entrepreneur Podcast with Roger Pierce. Whether you're scribbling business ideas on a napkin or wrestling with the should I, shouldn't I question, get ready to explore the realities, the risks, and the rewards of entrepreneurship as we share the stories, scars, and successes of small business owners.
Hey there, Unsure Entrepreneurs. Welcome to the show. Today, I'm joined by Steve Strauss, one of America's best-known small business voices. Steve is the best-selling author of the Small Business Bible, as well as 17 other business books. He was the senior small business columnist for USA Today for more than 20 years, and now writes about entrepreneurship and small business for Inc. The very well-respected and well-known national organization SCORE Mentors has named him the country's leading champion of small business. And we'll talk about SCORE a little bit later on. Steve's also an attorney, entrepreneur, speaker, and prolific content creator, to say the least. Through his company, the Strauss Group, Steve has worked with major brands, including Visa, Yahoo, PayPal, Bank of America, and Microsoft to produce things like blogs, videos, podcasts, ebooks, webinars, and other digital content. I can relate to that. There are many great examples of his work at the website mrallbiz.com. But to help small business owners directly, Steve created another website called planetsmallbiz.com, where visitors can learn how to start, run, and grow a small business. Doesn't stop there. In 2025, he created the excellent newsletter Notes to an Entrepreneur and grew it to over 22,000 subscribers. And I'm a big fan of this publication. Bottom line, Steve has spent decades studying entrepreneurs, writing about entrepreneurs, and helping entrepreneurs. So he clearly has his finger on the pulse of the small business movement in America. So naturally, I wanted to have him on the show to talk about a question that feels bigger than any one business. Does America need more entrepreneurs? And if the answer is yes, what can we do about it? Welcome, Steve.
Thank you for that generous intro, Roger, and happy to be on your show finally. I love your show and great to be here. Thank you.
Delighted to have you. I've been looking forward to this for a while. You and I have a lot in common. I think we're going to have a lot of fun together, and we've got a really important topic to cover. So let's dive in.
Let me tell you why I love entrepreneurship to start with. When I was a little kid, I grew up in Southern California, and my dad had taken one little carpet store, which was his business, and turned it into what became the biggest carpet chain in California at the time, back in the 70s. And I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I had to do a story in school about what my dad did for a living. Doctor, I could have said, lawyer, retail carpet store owner does not roll off the tongue of an 8-year-old. So I asked him, like, oh, Dad, what do I say? What do you do? And you think this is like 72, maybe 70, He goes, well, Stevie, I'm an entrepreneur. People did not banter that word around back then, I'm like, you're an entrepreneur, what? He said, I'm a person. An entrepreneur is a person who takes a risk with money to make money. I've heard lots of definitions over the years, but, maybe because that was my dear old dad gave me that one. I like that one a lot. Person who takes a risk with money to make money. Clearly, it rang a bell with me because this idea of taking a risk and making money and having fun. And I loved, watching my dad grow his business. That's what we would talk about over the dinner table at my house. It was growing a business. So entrepreneurship, as you said, it's in my blood. It's been part of me for a long time. And it took me a while to be able to do it on my own. But when I did, I did. Love it.
I'm sure your dad would be proud of you today for carrying on.
Thank you.
Right? And helping so many other entrepreneurs.
That's right.
Did you get to work in the business at all as a kid, or?
It's a funny thing. My very first job was in his carpet warehouse. I was about 15 years old. It lasted until this one day. It was a summer job where I was driving the forklift, and a carpet forklift has this long pole going out of the front of it so it can pick up the carpet rolls. And I drove that pole. It was up high. I'm driving, and it went right into my dad's wall, right through his wall, into his office. That was my last day working at the carpet store.
Wow.
But later on, my dad ended up growing this big business. And you know what? He was an entrepreneur, and he became kind of a manager. And he didn't like it. It was not a fun experience to run 20 different stores. So he sold out to his partner. And at the end of his career, he had one giant carpet warehouse again. My dad sadly passed away early, unexpectedly. And he left it to me, my 3 siblings, and the carpet store manager who ran the store because we were all underage. So 5 of us owned this carpet store, but she ran it. He thought he came up with this genius plan, but it was a horrible plan because one, none of us really wanted to go into the carpet business. I was at UCLA at the time. And two, is this poor woman running the store did all the work and she only got 1/5 of the money. It just didn't work. So we sold out to her. So long story, I never got a chance to go into the carpet business, but I think it worked out.
Your entrepreneurial roots run deep. I love it. And I guess this is a better path for you than forklift driver.
Anything's a better path for me than forklift driver. Can you tell me what was your first business?
Oh gosh, I've had businesses since I was in high school. I got involved in junior achievement.
Oh, good for you.
That's opened my eyes. And my grandfather, who's mentioned in my book, had a survey firm, fairly successful survey firm, land surveying back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They grouped like 20 people and had lots of government contracts. So I always admired him. And I would drive by his office window as a kid. I remember looking up with the name, Pierce on the windows and being very impressed by that.
Nice.
So,
You're thinking, yeah.
So let's talk about small businesses in America. As you know, small businesses sit at the heart of the American economy. Now, according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, there were 36 million, can you believe it? 36 million small businesses in the U.S. in 2025. And they make up 99% of all American businesses. That's an important fact a lot of people don't know about. Now, these small businesses employed 62 million people, which is like 46% of the private sector workforce.
And how many of those are one-person businesses?
That's right. Micro businesses.
I think it's 78%. I think, of those 30 million, the vast majority are one-person businesses, which people don't realize.
So true. A lot of people, look at business, they think of companies like Apple and Microsoft and Tesla, but the landscape is micro.
Yes.
Very small.
Yeah. Those big companies employ roughly half of all workers in the US, and small businesses employ roughly the other half. So half of everybody works for a small business, or knows somebody who does.
People should remember, if you just walk around your neighborhood, you'll see the small businesses that you often probably don't pay attention to, the dry cleaner and the bakery and the sandwich stop, the pub. That's America, isn't it? It's small businesses.
Yeah, and I love that analogy because I tell people something similar all the time. What is your book about? The Unsure Entrepreneur. It's about people who aren't sure whether they can do it. Should I do it? How do I do it? Should I take the risk? And I get this question similarly a lot from people. And what I say is, drive down the road. That car shop and that little market and the nail salon and the tanning place, those are people who had a dream too. Just like you, just like me. They figured out how to do it. There's their shop and they get to go there every day. And that's just the physical businesses. So if they did it, you can do it. Yeah, is it going to take some risk? Well, that is, as I said at the top, that's part of the game. Risk is part of the game. But the best entrepreneurs are the ones who reduce the risk to the extent possible and then go forward. And it's kind of the juice, I think, Roger. I'd love to hear your take. Taking the risk is like, okay, no one's going to tell me how to do it. I'm going to find some good podcasts and books that are going to help me, but I'm not going to have a boss telling me what to do. And that's the fun of the thing, I think.
It is an exciting and intimidating prospect of opening a business. And that's what my book, thanks for the shout out, The Unsure Entrepreneur, is all about. It's to kind of demystify what entrepreneurship is all about and provide people some real insights. It doesn't sugarcoat it. It talks about a lot of the bad things of entrepreneurship, like emotional risk and the toll it can take on mental health for entrepreneurs. I know you've written about those subjects in the past. But at the end of the day, we want people to start businesses. We want them to try it. And hopefully, by listening to what we're saying here today, they might consider that. So let me ask you, do you think Americans understand how important, as we just described, how important small businesses are to the economy and the culture?
I think they do for the most part. When I started writing about small business back around 2000 or so, not to date myself or anything, all the business was big business and .com. And my lone little voice about small business and little entrepreneurs was kind of drowned out. And I used to say, hey, pay attention. This is a big deal. And I think since then, things have shifted. Yeah, of course, big business always gets a lot of attention. But what do you hear every 4 years when the different politicians come out? Well, they talk about small business and how small business is the backbone of the American economy, and we need to support small business. And then they go away and they trot it out again 4 years later. But it does come out. And I do think just now, this idea of side hustles and this challenging economy we're in and AI is making people think about, well, what can I do? How can I do something else? Maybe I can't, maybe I shouldn't just have my main job at my job and have a side business. That's a small business. Or maybe I'm ready to go off on my own. So I just think that the culture and the context and the ability to create a small business, to become an entrepreneur, is easier than ever. And that's the good news. Technology has made it easier and cheaper than ever to start a business. So the risk that way, at least, is less. And you're right, there are other risks, reputational risk and emotional risk, and those are real. But I do think the idea that small business is important, and it might even be important to me as a person, is getting through, I think.
And I think it's important that people remember all these big businesses that we may see out in the news and dominate the news, they started off small,
Every one of them.
didn't they?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Apple started in a garage, and HP started in a garage, and Microsoft started, in Albuquerque when Bill Gates and Paul Allen dropped out of college, and they started a little company called, this is so funny, Trafo Data. You heard of this? Before Microsoft, they were analyzing traffic patterns with computers, and so their company was called Trafo Data. Not surprisingly, maybe it didn't do very well. You start out small. I tell my kids, I got 3 daughters, and I say, everything is hard before it's easy. And the same thing is true in business. Everything is little before it's big. And you don't have to get big. Lots of small businesses, most I would suggest, like being small. That's part of the fun of it. You get to run it, you get to control it. It's not too much overhead. You make what you make. And the bigger you get, it might get more complicated. So it's just fun to start small and stay small.
I was looking through some of your articles and you reminded me now, oh yeah, on Inc., you talked about Hershey, founder of Hershey going broke and now turning it into what, a $50 million brand at the time?
So Milton Hershey went bankrupt not once, not twice, 3 different times. And he still went forward and ended up becoming successful. I mean, now that's an entrepreneur or a dummy. I'm not sure which it is. But you know what? He looked at it as like, I had a 10-year run of the best entrepreneurial training you could have. And he started one company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then he started another one in New York. And finally, he figured out a way to make caramel last. Caramel at the time would go bad in a day or two. He had this process that would allow you to create caramel and let it keep, and it turned it into $1 million caramel company. And at the height of his caramel business, he was still an entrepreneur. He decided chocolate is amazing and everyone deserves chocolate. And chocolate at that time was kind of meant for upper classes and Europeans, and it wasn't readily available. He sold his caramel company, took his millions, and started Hershey Chocolate and became a $50 million at that time chocolate entrepreneur. So it's an amazing story because the resilience is really impressive. And that, what did he do right though? He kept learning from his mistakes, which I think is the key to a great entrepreneur. The ones that I write about in my newsletter and Notes to an Entrepreneur, everyone's making mistakes along the way, but then they figure something out. And all of a sudden that thing they figure out is like, oh, that's what I needed to get to the next level.
It's so true. And you touched upon so many points there, like persistence, never giving up, right?
Right.
Trying again and again. I mean, I'm glad we're having this conversation because I think part of my thing is there's all this discussion about all the big businesses. We got to pay more attention to the small businesses and help them. What would you say? What's one of your main reasons you like to see people start up a small business?
That's, it's always personal. It could be that boss you hate, which was true for me. Or it could be you wanted more freedom. That was true for me. Or it could be you wanted more creativity, or it could be positive things that come with this risk that we were talking about. Those are great things. To be your own boss is fantastic. To take your own ideas and run with them, that's really interesting. To be able to be creative and come up with a marketing idea and then implement that marketing idea and then make a profit with that marketing idea, that's super exciting. The chance to make a difference in your community and hire people and give people jobs. That's very intoxicating. So I think there's so many bad things that are going on in this world today. There are lots of people who like to destroy things, who like to talk negatively about things because it gets clicks and it gets attention. What I love about entrepreneurs, what I love about small business is it's positive. You are making, and it's not so easy to build something. Hey, tearing something down, blowing up a mosque, blowing up a synagogue. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's boom, boom, boom. Creating a business, that takes work. That takes creativity and vision and persistence and lots of positive things. And then when you do it, you're making money for yourself and for your family, and you're adding to the tax base. Maybe you're creating jobs and giving someone hope. And so many positive things come from, I'm waxing poetic here, but that's how I am. I really admire people who do it. And I really think it's in this world, it's more important than ever. And there's more opportunity in it than ever. There's so many ways to start a business now that weren't true when my dad started his carpet store.
I call them entrepreneurship enablers, and I call this the era of the entrepreneur. There's never been a better time
Yes.
to start a small business because, like you said, 30, 40, 50 years ago, yeah, you needed a couple $100,000 and an office and maybe a staff, another factory or whatever. But today, I can open a Shopify store this afternoon if I wanted to. There's so many things, and there's government money out there. We'll maybe touch upon that later. There's grants, there's banks, there's business competitions, there's people like you and I, hopefully helping entrepreneurs. This is, I think, a glorious time to start a small business.
I'm reminded of the story of and I told this in one of the newsletters, of Tommy Hilfiger, the designer. Before he was Tommy Hilfiger, he was a designer in some shop, and he was in the middle of his career, and he wanted to become a designer. And what am I going to do? I don't want to work for this guy forever. Make what he tells me to make and design what he tells me to design. I really have my own ideas. Sounds like an entrepreneur, right? So he went to a PR agent. He was working in New York, and the PR guy came up with this audacious plan. He said, Tommy, here's what I think you should do. I think you should get some backers and go buy yourself a billboard in Times Square. And on that billboard, we are going to compare you to the great designers of the day. We're going to compare you to Calvin Klein and to Ralph Lauren and to Perry Ellis and all of the great designers. And then there is Tommy Hilfiger. And he's like, that's crazy. I love it. And so he did it. He found some backers. He got a couple $100,000. They put up this billboard across from the Ralph Lauren polo store in Times Square, comparing him to all these great designers. And he became overnight the talk of the fashion industry. And then the next week, he ended up on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson interviewing him. And he became Tommy Hilfiger. So that's entrepreneurship, right? And it one big, bold bet. And he did it. It became this, this thing. So I don't know. I love these guys who do this, these women who do this, because they're risk takers and they make a difference in the world.
There's also the chance of maybe one day selling your business.
Absolutely.
Like you did. I'm going to pull up a fun fact here. You know what's coming. You sold one of your businesses to one of the sharks on the Shark's Tank. Can you tell us about that?
I did. So I've started 4 businesses. 3 have been very successful. The 4th one, we don't have to talk about, or I'm happy to talk about, right? Because I learned a lot in that one as well. But one of them came about a decade ago. This is before Obamacare. And it was a company called eHealth Insurance. And eHealth Insurance helped people navigate their health insurance options. And they thought their next big channel was going to be the micro entrepreneur who we'd been talking about, the one person business. So they found me. They said, Steve, what can we do together? We want to do something to attract the micro, freelancer, independent contractor business and let them know about eHealth Insurance. So we bandied around some ideas, and I said, why don't we come up with a website? Let's come up with a website. And I've got the content. I'll run the content. You run the finances. And together we'll build this great website designed specifically for the self-employed. I went out. I found the URL, the self-employed. It turned out it was already owned by a band in Sweden. Okay. And the band named the self-employed. So I spent $5,000. I bought the URL from them because it's such a perfect URL for a website for the self-employed, right? Obviously. So we created this website called The Self-Employed. And then I kept adding content to it and content. And then I got other partners. I found Bank of America wanted to run the money part of the website, that section. And Score, who you had mentioned, wanted to do the startup section. And LegalZoom wanted to sponsor the legal part. So I got all these different sponsors. They added content. I added content. It grew to be a really fantastic website. And about 4 or 3 years ago, Mark Cuban, a Mark Cuban company, came to me and said, we really love your content. We love the SEO, historical nature of your content. And we want to buy the website lock, stock, and barrel. And so I'm like, okay. I never built it with the expectation that I was going to have that kind of exit, but it turned out to be a great exit.
You got to expect the unexpected and pivot in entrepreneurship. Now, tell listeners what he turned that into.
So he had a site at that time called Zen Business. And Zen Business is a company that it'll incorporate for you. It'll do anything you need for your small business. I love Zen Business. It'll incorporate for you. It'll help you create content. It'll help you create your website. It does everything. And so their plan was he didn't create Zen Business, but he became the majority stakeholder in Zen Business. And Zen Business went around at that time and bought every little small business oriented website. So Riva had a site, our friend Riva Lozonsky, that was sold to Zen Business. A couple other people that I know. Zen Business bought all these different sites for the content, for the SEO. So when you Google anything these days, you're going to often end up on Zen Business because our content now is the content of Zen Business. It was a very smart, not surprising business strategy to kind of own that space.
Did you get any tickets to go see the Mavericks at the time?
Damn it, no.
Should have put that in the agreement.
Right.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing it. Okay, we've talked about, why we need more entrepreneurs, but let's talk about what we can do to, get people more interested in entrepreneurship. And that's one of the reasons behind the podcast and the book is there's lots of people who are interested in entrepreneurship, but they are hesitant. They don't know where to begin. They don't know much about the money side of the business. They worry about failure. That's a big one. Maybe we'll talk about that. And they wonder if they've got what it takes. So a couple quick stats to frame our talk. The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, one of the most respected reports and surveys on small business, says the fear of failure still deters about 2 in 5 adults from starting a business. That's a lot. That's 40%. And yet, on the other side, the Kauffman Foundation, another well-respected think tank on entrepreneurship, they have a report that's encouraging. They say the opportunity share of new entrepreneurs rose to 83% in 2025, which means most new entrepreneurs are starting by choice rather than out of necessity. So we kind of have both things happening at once, Steve. We have fear and opportunity. So I want to talk to you about this. In your opinion, what do you think holds people back from starting a business today?
I think fear is a big one for sure. This idea of risk. And it's a little bit of an old fashioned idea because, as you mentioned, there's never been a better time to start a business. There's never been an easier time or a more affordable time or more opportunity. I mean, this really is, I think, the golden age of entrepreneurship. For one, entrepreneurs are celebrated. I mean, if you look at who gets the juice in our culture, who gets the media, who gets the attention, it's the entrepreneurs, right? For sure, that's true. Way beyond that, it's just that technology has made it such that starting a business doesn't need to be a hugely financially risky thing. And you're not on your own like you were a generation ago, right? It used to be like my dad or me when I started my first law firm. You read a book and you crossed your fingers and hope you knew enough to do it. But these days, there are podcasts, there are websites, there are trainings, there are institutions and groups like SCORE, like the SBA, the Small Business Administration. There's so much help out there that you're really not on your own. You're on your own doing it, but you're not by yourself. That, for one, makes it much easier. And then if you were to make an online business, which is what so many people want to do these days, the overhead is just a radically different computation. You're not renting a place or buying a place. You're not paying for labor unless you really need it. You're not paying all heat and utilities. So your overhead is much, much lower. If you run it out of your house, it's almost nil. So that takes the risk down substantially. But there's always going to be some risk. That's just the way it goes. You're going to be risking some capital if you're going to do it right, because I think the worst thing you can do is start a business and not have enough money to market it and get the word out there. That's like a big mistake. So it's going to take some money for sure. Okay, that's the way it goes. And you're going to tell people you're doing it. It's going to cost you some reputation. Good. Well, if you succeed, they're going to think you're a genius. That's the thing about risk. Sometimes it pays off. So
Without risk, there is no reward.
right, risk and reward. And then with all this different help, even AI, let's talk about AI for a second. The AI help, you put the right prompt into the right AI, it kind of can do it for you. I know the agents are out there, but at least you're going to get a plan very specific to you. It's going to tell you what you should be doing and what you can do and how to do it. And it's going to be world-class help and information. That too is great. So yeah, I understand that people are scared of starting a business, makes them nervous, but you should also just flip that and use that to get excited about the possibility and the option and being your own boss and making a difference and running with your ideas. I was a terrible employee. I don't know about you, Roger, but I had to be an entrepreneur because I stunk at being an employee, because I just didn't like taking direction and I didn't quite do what they said. And I always thought my ideas were better. And gee, I got fired from the law. How surprising.
Nobody would hire me again.
Is that right? That's true for me.
I'm ruined. I'm ruined for employment. That's for sure.
Yeah, my first job out of law school, I got a great big job at a big law firm in the big city, making the big bucks, and I was just big time unhappy. I was not good at it, and also I was kind of a mediocre lawyer. So it turns out I'm a fantastic writer. So right around that time, my first books got published. I was able to get published after trying for a decade, and then I got fired, and I thought, this is my moment. And my sweet wife supported me, and I had a friend who believed in me and lent me a little bit of money. And I opened my first law office, and it was successful. Right from day one, I made a profit the first month. That was great, but still, I wanted to do more than just practice law. And it turned out, the idea of getting customers more than I liked practicing law. Right, I liked the business part of it more than I liked the legal part of it. So I ended up, creating this content company. I was very fortunate that way. Point is, it never would have happened if I hadn't taken the risk. And so I think people are scared, and they're scared of spending the money, but it is for sure easier than ever. I know you must be saying the same thing on your podcast and in your book, right?
It is the right time to consider entrepreneurship, all things considered. And you touch upon so many great things there. So we might as well talk about support right now. And I'm going to bring up SCORE Mentors because I know you are heavily involved with the organization. That's a great example of a resource out there available to help small business owners succeed. Can you explain a bit more what it does?
Yeah. So SCORE is was over 50 years old. It's part of the Small Business Administration, the SBA. The way it was explained to me is like a Peace Corps of entrepreneurs in the United States. There's 11,000 volunteers, people who were entrepreneurs or businesses. They owned a business, whatever it is, and they volunteer their time at their different SCORE offices. So every state will have a SCORE office, usually several SCORE offices. And then score.org is the overall website. And you can go to SCORE and get a business mentor, right? People always want to know, where do I get a mentor? Go to SCORE for free. They'll hook you up with one of these volunteers. And let's say you have a problem with marketing or you need to know something about how to do a marketing campaign. They'll find somebody whose marketing is their specialty and hook you up, and you're going to have your own SCORE counselor. And you can meet in person for coffee, or you could meet over online just via text and DM and email. SCORE does lots of great webinars. I'm a SCORE webinar presenter. If you're going to one of their webinars, you might have heard me. So it's a fantastic organization. I was on their board of directors actually last year, and that was cool. Very exhausting, a lot of work, but it was an honor. And a couple of years ago, they named me the champion of small business in all of America. So that was pretty cool too. But I just love SCORE because I think small businesses, you can go read something, go find a website, but actually being able to talk to somebody who's done it, who can give you some advice, and it's for free. That's really incredible.
Great organization, and I'll put the website address in the show notes. But you raise a good point. We're not in this alone. There is help out there, whether it's through organizations like SCORE or whether it's through a small advisory council of your own construction. Bring in some entrepreneurs, bring in some business owners, meet every quarter and ask them, hey guys, help me with my business. We're not alone out there, are we?
Absolutely. We are not alone out there. And you know what? People want to help you. You start a business, You'll find your friends, your family, your colleagues, they'll send you business if you ask. People want to help. We all like small business, actually, to answer one of your earlier questions. And if you go out there and say, hey, I'm starting a business, and if you know anybody who needs, this is what I offer. I do ghostwriting for people, whatever it is, they'll help.
Just need to.
And can I mention one more thing, Roger?
Yeah, please.
I did a SCORE webinar just recently. This is what got me thinking about that. A couple of weeks ago on boomerpreneurship during Small Business Week. And it was very well attended because there are a big group of people my age. I won't speak for you, maybe your age, I'm not sure, who are boomers, or at least they're older entrepreneurs. And typically, maybe they were never an entrepreneur before, but they're going in to their senior years or they're wrapping up their first career. And they like this idea of starting a small business or a side hustle. But how do you do it? And how do you do it when you're older? Because the risk ratio is different when you're older, right? You have less tolerance for risk for good reason. You don't want to risk your 401k. So how do you do it? So I had a fantastic webinar. People could go to score.org if they wanted to see it. They could Google my name there. They'd see the boomerpreneurship webinar. And I'm actually doing some coaching for people if they're interested. You can find me on my website, Mr. Albiz, shoot me an email, and I'm helping some older second act people start their own business these days as boomers. So that's another way people can get into this entrepreneurship world in a smart, savvy, less risky way.
Let's talk about that for a quick sec. Boomers make great entrepreneurs for some of the reasons you just mentioned. They've got hopefully a little more access to capital than younger entrepreneurs. They've got experience, they've got connections, they've got wisdom, patience, all those things that make for great entrepreneurs. That's a huge market because it's people who are, too young to stop working, but looking for their next adventure. Fair enough?
Yes, exactly. And those skills and assets are really not insignificant. Just the people you know. A young 20-something tech bro wants to know people. You, me, we know people. We have a whole network of people we can tap into. Ideally, we have some resources, and ideally, we have a skill set that is very honed, that is very unique and very good, and that people would pay for, right? So you can even just go out as a consultant and take, your list of people and your skills, and you'll get gigs. You can start in a nice second career and doing it on your terms when you want, when they write you the check and not your company. You'll like that a lot. It's a very potentially lucrative and less risky way to make some money and still be productive and useful and feel like you're doing something.
Absolutely. They make great entrepreneurs on all fronts. My typical advice to someone who gets let go, in their late 40s or 50s from their company. And I often say, you know what? Set up a service company, set up a consulting company, and sell yourself right back to them
Very good.
for 3 times the money.
There you go. That's right. Yeah.
And some of them pay it. They actually would
Oh,
want that
yeah.
flexibility, right?
Right, because all of a sudden there's a big gap in the company. Like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. There's always opportunity there. So a bit of a connection to me to that topic, Steve, and I know we got to watch the clock. Educating entrepreneurs, not just in school, not just and when they're young. I know that's important. I've got a stat here saying 2/3 of students said they were interested in starting a business, but 80% felt they didn't learn enough about it in school. So again, building on that theme of entrepreneurship awareness and education, which is one of the things you're doing, of course, helping people learn about entrepreneurship. Do we need to be doing more of that across the age spectrum?
Absolutely. But I'm a little different than most people you might talk to. I'm not one of these guys who thinks we need to teach entrepreneurship in school. In high school, they should do, young entrepreneurs or whatever, it is. I think go to college and get yourself a good education. Go learn how to think. Go butt up against adversity. Go hit that professor who gives you a hard time. Right? I had a torts professor, right? I practiced law, as you mentioned, I came to my senses. I don't do that anymore. But boy, Judge Adams taught me how to think, right? He was my torts professor. And my first 2 weeks, I hated this guy so bad that I actually went to the dean. I'm like, please transfer me out of this man's class. I do not want to be in Judge Adams' class. I ended up becoming Judge Adams' TA. I fell in love with the man. He taught me so much. And me and my wife, one of our best memories is going with Judge Adams and his wife on his boat down the river when I was a senior. Now, if I had just quit and said, oh, it's too hard for me, or I'm going to go start a business, I never would have known how to think like a great lawyer, which is what he taught me how to think like, right? So those experiences are, I think, to really run a business, you need to be well-rounded. You need to come up against some bumps along the way. And couldn't you be 20 and move to Palo Alto and try and get some VC money? Yeah, you can. But I think in the real world, we mere mortals don't do that kind of thing. Right. So if you're just a regular person who wants to start, a young person who's thinking about starting a business, go work in that business first. You want to start in a restaurant? Go work in a restaurant and see how hard it is. See how low the margins are. See what the overhead is like. See what keeping people on staff, how hard it is. Then you go run a restaurant. You want to run some kind of tech business? Go work for Google for a while. My daughter works at Yahoo and in New York. She's not feeling like she wants to be an entrepreneur right now, at least in the tech world, because you get the inside view. My point is, you need to learn the business first before you go start a business. So instead of just theoretically learning it in school, I think it's a much better experience to go experience life and then go find something you do find interesting and then go work in that industry. That's the best thing you could do to become an entrepreneur.
Fantastic advice. Get paid to learn, really.
Get paid to learn. Like the law firm. I went to work at this big law firm for 2 years. I learned how to be a lawyer. I learned how to draft a brief. I learned how to go to court. They taught me all, and then they fired me. So, but that's when I was able to go off and know how to be a lawyer and start my own practice. So
it's interesting how the path of life takes us on these twists and turns, but it usually works out just fine.
That's for sure true.
So before we go to our next segment, I have a fun question for you. I couldn't help but bring this up because I saw it on your bio. Is it true, Steve, that you hate ketchup?
my nemesis, ketchup. Oh, I hate ketchup. I grew up in Southern California, as I said, and there was a Hunt's tomato plant about a mile from our house. In the hot summer sun, they had these vats of tomatoes sitting outside, and this smell of rotting tomatoes would waft over our house for 2 months over the summertime. Like that smell, I couldn't take it, and it's damaged me into my adulthood. My younger brother Spence used to love, like, we'd get hamburgers and he would love, like, when I'm looking away, he'd sneak ketchup onto my hamburger and then put the bun back on it. And I could smell it a mile away, much to my children's dismay, because they grew up saying, well, you like pizza, Dad, and, you like spaghetti sauce. Yeah, okay, I do. But I don't like ketchup.
I guess I shouldn't send you that bag of ketchup chips.
Damn you, Roger. No, you shouldn't.
Watching our time too, I want to talk about your advice for emerging entrepreneurs. So this show is for people who are obviously on the fence, not sure they want to go down this path, although we've given them lots of good reasons to consider that. One of the things we haven't talked about is earnings and money, because I know that's a big myth, Steve, for entrepreneurs. So I just want to share a stat. The average self-employed worker in America earned about $62,600 in self-employed income in 2024. So that's a respectable number, but it's also a useful reality check. It's not millions. Entrepreneurship is not always about getting rich. As you and I both know, it's about building independence, flexibility, pursuing your passion, controlling your future. But it can be, for the right person, one of the most rewarding paths there is. So I'd love to get your take. Knowing that you're not going to get rich out of it and maybe accepting that reality, is there a way someone can test an idea before taking on too much risk?
Absolutely. I think one of the best things you can do, if you have a job, I don't recommend quitting your job and starting a business. Do you?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We're on the same page there. That's too much of a risk. But what I do suggest is come up with an idea for whatever your business is, stay at your job, and then either do it part-time, right, as a kind of a side hustle as you can, or even better, go interview people who are doing it. Go talk to people who are living you want to start a carpet cleaning company, which actually can be a very lucrative business. I'll just use that because I know carpets, right? Well, go find some carpet cleaning companies, maybe in a different city so they don't think of you as the competition. Go 10, 20 miles away, find a carpet cleaning company, take the owner out to lunch and pick their brain. What's good about this business? What's bad about this business? How do you hire? How much money can you make? How do you grow it? What's the best marketing idea? You do that 3 or 4 times, and then you're really going to get a fantastic education on how to start that business from people who do it. Then the risk we've talked about this whole time, you've reduced it way down because you know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. You know what's going to work, what's most likely to work, and what's most likely not going to work. And then I would say, save up a little money, then you can quit or get fired and go start that business.
Great advice. Remind me, I just interviewed someone last week, a 16-year-old young lady who is running a arguably very successful jewelry business. She's doing trade shows. She's got billboards. She's got a lot of national presence, and she's doing it in between classes and after class. She's in grade 11.
I mean, so impressive.
So, like you said, don't quit school, don't quit the job, start the side hustle, prove to yourself. That's a great way to mitigate the risk.
Absolutely.
So, how about on the flip side, Steve? When should someone not start a business?
Starting business is not for everybody. Being an entrepreneur is not for everybody. Some people are athletes. I'm not an athlete, although I tried. Right? Some people are artists. Some people are musicians. Some people are employees, and some people are entrepreneurs. We all need great employees. There's nothing wrong with being an employee. Boy, if you can go and fit in that organization and make it work and do your job and be a good colleague, that's a super valuable asset. It doesn't mean you have to quit it and go and start your own thing. It's a whole different skill set to do the entrepreneurial thing. So you got to make sure, one, that you have the skill set, whether you can live with risk, whether you can live with uncertainty, whether you have enough ideas, whether you have the backing of your family or not. Because if you don't, that's a non-starter right there. How much competition is there in the area that you want to start? Because if there's too much, that's scary too. If there's none, that's maybe a sign too. So there's lots of things that go into that equation, whether you're going to start a business or not, become an entrepreneur or not. And you just got to make sure that it's a lifestyle that fits with your temperament and that your work skills fit with what you can do and go make money at. I mean, being an artist is cool because you can just go buy a canvas and paint a picture and you paint your picture. But when you're an entrepreneur, you got to go paint the picture and then you got to sell the picture. That's the difference. So you got to make sure that you can do the thing and then there's a market for it and that you know how to sell it and make money at it. So you got to make sure that all those things actually fit you before you go and do it.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, all things considered, that's
A
not
lot
for
right
me.
to saying no. Absolutely.
It's okay to stay employed. And what if someone does start, Steve, and they fail? And that's a big concern for people. What do you say to people who are worried about failing if they do venture in?
Well, welcome to the club.
Me too.
Right. And we've all been there. I started 4, 3 were successful. The fourth was I had started a law firm in one city and I decided I was going to expand into another city. So I opened another law firm about 90 miles away, and it was pretty much a pre-internet era. So it wasn't so easy to run 2 offices so far away. I dumped $40,000 into a losing venture, and it was stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how I was going to run it. What worked in one city didn't work in the other city. So failure is part of it. You read any story about Steve Jobs or Virgin Airlines or Martha Stewart, all of them have had failures. In fact, in my Notion Entrepreneur newsletter, I share the story of that someone who'd been failing, and all of a sudden, Milton Hershey, all of a sudden they figured something out. The fun part is when you figure it out, right? That's why my newsletter is successful and popular. And sign up, people, if you don't. What kind of entrepreneur would I be if I didn't say that? But we all fail. Then you keep going. I think that's how it's supposed to work.
I think on your newsletter a couple issues ago, you talked about the guy who invented the cup of noodles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right? Didn't he do
What
a
was
few
his name?
iterations?
But he had failure after failure in his life. And then this idea of freeze drying noodles, he became a billionaire. I mentioned Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart was a caterer well into her 40s in Connecticut. And then she'd gone to a party in New York City and someone offered her a book deal and she did a book called Entertaining. But even then, she wasn't very, very well known. She was a caterer with a book. Then she met a woman who was a business genius. And that they combined, they created Martha Stewart Living Omni Media. Martha was able to, and the woman had some money behind her. So Martha was able to become this creative genius that she is. The partner did all the nuts and bolts and back end work, and together they did it. But it took those two people working together, and in her mid 40s, almost into her 50s, before she became Martha Stewart. There's failures along the way, and you find the right teammate. Often that's what makes a difference.
Boy, I could talk to you forever.
It's fun.
2 last questions. I know we got to go, but I can't help but picking your brain on this. Is there one thing you wish more new entrepreneurs, emerging entrepreneurs understood before they begin?
Starting a new business, I like to say, is like being alone in a dark room. You know you're there. No one else knows you're there. So you have to turn the light on. And the only way you turn the light on is to market your business and then market it some more and then market it some more. That's it. And so marketing and getting the word out has to be the key to your business from the very start. When I was in law school, I took a class on how do you start your own law firm, because even then I was thinking about it. And the professor said, think of everyone you know, every single person, colleagues, work people, family. He goes, you need 10 different sources. He goes, everyone you know is one source. Now, advertising, there's another source. Podcasts, there's another source. That's what I'm saying. You got to think expansively and think big about how you're going to turn that light on from the start. That's a really big key to success, I think.
Nothing sells itself.
That's for sure.
Good for you. Marketing and selling. And that's a scary prospect for a lot of new entrepreneurs because they think, oh, well, my product's going to be popular. I don't really have to worry about marketing and selling.
No, you got to let people know.
Got to get out there, as you said. But there's lots of help and resources for you. Okay, so let's end on a positive note. What do you love most about this thing we call entrepreneurship and small business?
For me, it's not having a boss. For me, it's being the boss, the freedom. I had some terrible bosses along the way. I had one boss who threatened to he got so mad at me because I didn't hit my sales figure that he threatened to put a cigarette out in my forehead. Okay. And then I had another boss she was just horrible, really horrible to work for. So I never worked with bosses well. I like being a boss. I think I'm good to the people who work with me. And I like doing what I want to do every day, figuring it out. For me, that's the best. What do you like about it best?
Doing what you love to do every day.
There you go.
Yeah, mine is the same, for sure. I mean, the waking up in the morning enthused, excited about what lies ahead. Even the mundane stuff. I know I'm a geek. Even the mundane stuff, like, oh yeah, I got to write that proposal. But you know what? It's my proposal. It's my idea, and it's my opportunity.
That's right.
I take ownership of it, and I get excited about that.
Very good.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a great conversation. I know I got to let you go. Hopefully we can get you back on sometime.
Oh, I'd love it. It'd be great. Yeah, no, this is really fun. Thank you so much, Roger.
Well, it's been a great conversation. Thank you for sharing all of this stuff. And remember what Steve says, this is the golden age of entrepreneurship. If you dream it, you can do it. So Steve, tell us, what's the best way for listeners to connect with you or get your stuff?
Yeah, you can come to my website, which is mrallbiz.com, MRALLBIZ.com. Or if you go over to inc.com, you can find me at my Inc column, or you can email me, sstrauss@mrallbiz.com.
Fantastic. And I'll remind people here to sign up for the free newsletter, Notes to an Entrepreneur.
Right. You can get that. And I should have said, that's news.planetsmallbusiness.com. And you can get the newsletter there.
Perfect. It's a great newsletter.
Keep up the great work, Roger.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, folks out there listening, if you're considering starting a business, I wrote a book for you called The Unsure Entrepreneur. It's a decision guide for people who are on the fence and want honest answers and not hype about the realities of self-employment. Grab a copy at unsureentrepreneur.com. Thanks, everyone, for spending time with me. If you're feeling unsure, you're in the right place. Bye for now.
That's it for this episode of the Unsure Entrepreneur podcast. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss other candid conversations with small business owners. And be sure to check us out at unsureentrepreneur.com.